thank you. I can't tell if this is picking up in the back. Yes? Thank you all for coming. And thanks, Marina, for the introduction, and Star for the invite. I hadn't really expected that we're going to be here. In fact, I was telling Star, I was a little bit late. I don't know if I made you worry, but I was over at the Utah State University Library trying to find the Bridger room. And yeah, so it was very lucky that the people at the desk had been to this library too, and they could say, no, dummy. It's back on Main Street. Anyway, I'm not originally from Utah. I grew up in the Northwest. I grew up specifically in Washington State. And though I lived for 4 years in Spokane, I grew up on the west side of the Cascades. Anybody been up to the Northwest? Okay, how would you characterize the weather?
Wet.
Wet. Dreary? Okay, well, okay. See, I missed that. I missed that a lot. I missed the green, I missed the fog, I missed the overcast, I missed the puddles, I missed the rain. I just missed all of that, especially in Utah, especially in the summertime when it's just endlessly blue and everybody thinks it's perfect, it's wonderful, and I want it to change, and it just doesn't change, right? So sometimes when I'm writing, I'm thinking about my home, right? And how many people are originally from Utah, lived your whole lives here? Okay, now imagine yourself somewhere without mountains. Uh-huh, all right, and me too. I mean, I really need the mountains. But I miss the rain sometimes. And lately it's been overcast and rainy and really, to me, great, right? And on the way up here, you go past Willard Bay, and it had been sort of overcast the whole way, and then the sun is going down, and so it's ridiculously blinding, but it looks great, because in some small way it reminded me of Tacoma, Commencement Bay. It just sort of looked like that, just for a minute. All right, so I want to start with a couple of poems. They're origin stories, all right? And both of them begin with the same line in the old songs about Washington. And that's because I'm from Washington. You say, well, why not old songs about you? That's up to all y'all to write those, okay? I will say this too. There are no true old songs about Washington. I made them up. So technically they are new songs, but I'm calling them old songs. So a couple of origin stories to begin. The first one's called In the Beginning Was a Girl. In the old songs about Washington, a girl woke up with feathers instead of hair, woke up with silver eyes and saw behind the moon, which was where the future tried to hide himself till it was time. The future liked his secrets, lifting each one up like an oyster, sometimes breaking one open to put in a pearl, sometimes to swallow it whole. And in the old songs, this meant the girl possessed a power, and that she'd be tempted. Offered necklaces of moonstones, dresses of spun moonlight, the wild permission of wolf packs to run with them and hunt anything the future could think of to trade to get back his secrecy. But she refused. What she wanted was a moment, a single piece of him to press against her skin, to hold and grow in her body, and that was all. The future agreed to this bargain, which is how, according to the old songs, we were born. And this one's another origin story. It's an origin story, well, technically about blackberries, but really, I think about it as a poem about why we have stories, what it is that they do for us, why we need them at all. It's called The Woman Who Gave Blackberries to the World. In the old songs about Washington, something strange appeared in a widow's yard. At first, nobody noticed, or they pretended not to see. Even ants in their disciplined lines marched right around. It rose from the ground above some loneliness she planted, tall enough already to cast shadows, snag fog. And in the old songs, they decided to ask her to leave. But just then, children saw the blackberries and tasted them and ate and couldn't stop no matter how scratched they got, and it was good. And people came carrying baskets, telling stories, and the woman was no longer all alone. So those are some older poems. I got two that are newer, that are also origin stories. One is sort of the story, well, I won't spoil the end. I'll just tell you the poem. It's called The Story of the Seahorse and the Wave. Always he'd been there, at home in the ocean, anchored to the seagrass by his tail. But his thoughts kept drifting till one day he let go and was carried away by beauty. He didn't know she'd been wanting him, approaching in the shape of a wave, and now he was spinning with her inland over fields, up foothills, a mile beyond the shoreline. The sky above was like new blue water, and the trees all around a new reef, and his body grew to fit the sudden size of his heart, full of loss as he saw her receding. He waited on a lookout rock, but she never returned. To be at home in this strange terrain, he'd need legs, hard hooves, and the wind's own balance. And so he became the first horse and galloped away. And this one's called The Story of the Forest and the Owl. Every word of it is true, by the way. I mean, this is exactly where owls come from. The Story of the Forest and the Owl. The morning awoke, having dreamed all night of hunger. But its branches were still full of birdsong, and the sky above full of sun, and a passing cloud filled the morning with shadow, so even its edges felt cool. The creek was there, full of music, nothing empty, nothing without. And yet the dream kept recurring, each night a deepening ache, till one day the forest found a hollow in one of its trunks, and something there nesting. Eyes like keepers of the moonlight, talons like locks, soft feathers, but its body a fist, the first owl. Born as love is, from an unknown hunger, asking as love does, who? And then this is another new poem called Facts and Figures, and then I'll switch to poems from the book. Facts and Figures. None of this comes with citation, of course. And I've had to fill in most of it myself. It has to do with homework, a notebook, a math book 2 pounds heavier with rain, and papers scattered like leaves across my yard. November 18th, 2014. 4 days after I'd heard it on the radio, and who doesn't love a good robot story? Outer space. Jesus Valenzuela. I figured he went to the school down the street and stopped in. Nobody wanted it there. His mother had told him Jesus es el líder, the family moving away or again or out, and no forwarding address. The secretary nodded at the trash can, gave me a look like, thanks for trying. Instead, I took it all home and dried it by the fire. My list of facts by Jesus. Fact 1, Utah looks so much like Mars that Martian movies make their movie here. Look it up. Fact 2, have you ever run so fast as you can into a rock wall like Wile E. Coyote? Smash. 40,000 is the comet speed and spaceship land on it. Wow. Fact 3, what is a origami swan? Fact 4, 311 million, that's how many mile? I couldn't help smiling. He zeroed in on the detail I liked too. The physicists needed a simile, an origami swan, to float their story on the shallow pond of the news. What took off from Earth weighing 200 pounds would weigh less in the comet's different gravity, only as much as a piece of paper, folded bird. And if it bounced, if it fluttered away after all those years of waiting, the craft had to spear gun spikes in the rock and hold on, and Jesus, 3rd grade, Salt Lake City, wrote the right question in his notebook. If it weren't for the swan, that anchor in the story, would it stick? Would anyone hold still and listen? Jesus did better than the physicists, though. He packed all their facts in one figure. 10 years of travel, 4 billion miles, involving 4 planetary slingshot orbits, pack it down. 1 trillion comets in our solar system, and you're trying to land on one? And it's clocking 40+ thousand miles per hour, pack it down. That craft piloted remotely, that craft the size of a washing machine, but with instruments rather than a tumbler drum, fragile and expensive. Pack it down into one image, and you did. Amen for Smash Jesus, amen for Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah.
But why was your backpack scattered in my yard? And where'd you go? More facts and figures. 311 million miles away is definitely distant. I have 216,000 on my car, an old Saturn I pay to keep running. If I drove it for 18,000 years, I could park in that comet's garage. By the way, NASA didn't build this ship, the engineers were European. Now, picture them spiking the ball in our end zone. Imagine their touchdown dance. We've displaced our dollars from exploration into roads and border enforcement. Fact 3, what is a origami swan? Science needs someone to tell its story. Carcharodon, Carcarius, or great white? I think you can see my point. I'm calling that spaceship the Valenzuela. I'm naming that comet, look it up. I don't know where you're gone, Jesus. But I hope wherever it is, you get to be a kid. And someone is showing you which dot is Mars. My own son says he wants to go there, be an astronaut. He doesn't know it's a one-way trip. An empty rock without Christmas trees, and he'd walk 8 years without seeing a river or cat. I think he'd be lonely. Don't be lonely where you are, Jesus. Try to hang on to your homework. I like the lion you drew in your math book. Sleep well. Thank you. So the poems in 88 Maps, I'll start with one called Break a Leg and They Put You Out to Pasture, which the title is in quotes, like somebody says that as a dialogue line, right? Break a leg and they put you out to pasture. And it starts also in dialogue. I don't think that storytellers, story writers, fiction writers should be the only ones that get to use dialogue, right? Poets ought to be able to use all the same tricks that dramatists or short story writers use too, not novelists. That would be a little bit long for a poem. I don't know that anymore people, aside from say, I don't know, if we had mead and could actually construct a mead hall, would stay all night and hear one bardic epic poem, but I'm willing to try. If anybody knows how to make mead. So I'll start with this one. It's called Break a Leg and They Put You Out to Pasture. Take everything you don't know, line it up, you got the horizon. But get your head in a book, you've got a boat. That's the kind of thing he'll say between 2 bites of an apple. It's one of the reasons I don't mind him crossing the street when I'm watering the yard. He's earned these analogies, worked 23 years as a fire jumper, wound up with 7 breaks in his ankle and leg, a whole scaffolding of steel inside. Another reason is the cider he brings me, the easiest way to deal with the apples. He says, I ought to just burn the damn tree, but I'm too used to putting fires out. Maybe not a boat exactly, but an oar for sure, or a spyglass. By now, he's wielding the hose while I follow and watch, fake professional interest. He's spraying at the bees around the flowers like he's putting out sparks. He's probably right about the spyglass. You open a book and draw the distance nearer. The words inside it help clarify, and it's all done with mirrors by reflection. Not a bad trick. It makes me wonder sometimes if a tree he saved became paper, or 100 board feet of pencils, or a chair in a bookstore cafe. I imagine the heat, of course, everywhere, pressing and heavy as water. But the roar of standing in a world of fire, not a pulsing and pausing like the shoreline's heartbeat, a constant sound, swallowing all sound. That's harder to do. Thirst. I have forgot about thirst. All those back-to-back shifts drinking nothing but smoke. I could have retired, he says. No one expects more than 20. But it felt like jumping into empty air and then landing with nothing to do. The hose is rolled up by the side of the house, now the whole yard shining from sunlight on water. And we're standing on the porch drinking cider, talking about raccoons. There is only regret, he tells me, not the leg. He's seen tree trunks more shattered. 4 baby raccoons, maybe 5 months old. He saw the flames reflecting off their eyes, pulled them out of a hollow, shoved them in his coat, got them down to the base camp, poured iodine onto the bite marks and scratches, went back in. He found out the next morning. They just took him to the county pound and put him to sleep. There's a field I passed by on my way to work. So out of place in the landscape. Too close to new tract homes and cul-de-sacs, shopping. 1,000 miles from Texas, a hitch in the step, a break in the usual line where they're grazing all these longhorn cows. I love that part of the drive. I don't belong here either. My neighbor and I, we've got that in common. Enough, we never have to talk about it. Enough, we just wave in the winter while shoveling snow on varying sidewalks. It's how I know they really will burn that tree. Yell out at me to come on over. He'll hand me a last jar of cider, then stand there, probably with pain in his leg. And I'll stand there too and help him watch the fire. So one of the things that I have noticed, I've been living in Salt Lake City and driving down to Orem where I work for 18 and a half years. And one of the things I've noticed is that anybody been down there recently? There is different. It's all infill, all right? Which is what happened in Louisiana before I moved there, which is what happened in Spokane while I lived there, which is what's been going on in Western Washington from Everett all the way to Mount Rainier practically, while I have not been in Washington State. But when I'm back, it's not the same state anyway. I mean, there might be a memory of the state I grew up in underneath a parking lot somewhere. All right, and this is what we've been doing. This is what we're up to. And right now, it is absolutely crazy how clear it is because there's no more middleman. All right, you know the place called Point of the Mountain? Is this a familiar thing?
Yes.
Okay, which is odd. They're all mountains, right? The whole mountains everywhere, but one of them is designated Point of. And the funny thing about it is it's not a mountain at all. It is a gravel pit. It is a gravel mine, and it is shrinking. Because that's what happens when you turn a mountain into gravel. But they've totally cut out the mystery now. You know, there is an actual from a little like, I don't know what you call it, some kind of contraption jerry-rigged bridge thing, which you know, rotates the gravel like treadmill style over the cars northbound, and then it comes out a chute into the middle between the northbound and the southbound lanes, and then they flatten it out, and that's where they're putting the new freeway lanes, because they're widening it, right? They're widening it. I guess there are a lot of people got to go to Cabela's and those things in, you know, what was once Lehigh. But I mean, so you can actually see people are turning what was once and is still called a mountain into, and now you just cruise on by ignoring that this goes on. Okay, so I think that we can do better. Right? And I know I'm not legislative, but I still have a word of advice for the legislators. And I would say Ralph Becker, but he has been vamoosed. So I'll say Jackie Biskupski. I hope you hear this somehow. All right? This is called Suggestions for Urban Renewal. 1, a no umbrellas ordinance. Instead of poking holes in the rain, people should have to wear hats. 2, let's take away hats while we're at it. Make everyone risk being sexy. A woman with gray sky eyes, for instance. Hair darker, the ends of it curling. 3, one rainy day on Grafton Street, I waited out the weather drinking tea. This was Dublin, so I needed a second pot. Then a third with a girl who'd noticed my accent. 4, a short walk from there to the National Gallery. We outran the next burst of rain. Kandinsky, Chagall, of course, the Renaissance in marble, and her face still flushed from the cold and the running. A drop, she hadn't yet blinked from her lashes. 5, then she showed me, I didn't even know he had a brother, a room full of paintings by Jack Yates. 6, they were amazing. 7, like rain at night on a metal roof, or watching a storm from a wide front porch. Or 8, maybe just red umbrellas, some color to contrast the overcast. 9, a retail anchor is not the answer. 10, a new target's not where people fall in love. And this one's for the state legislators. It's called Here in the Rugged Noble West. Frequently I'll just have the titles go straight into the poems because that's what got me started in the first place, and then you get to the end and you're like, now what do I call this sucker? And a lot of times I can't think of it, so I just elevate the first line into the title position, and voila, right? Especially the first time that worked for me is I was trying to write a sonnet, and it was 15 lines. I was driving myself nuts. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. And 14 remain, and I'm done, right? So, no mystery. It's just sometimes a shortcut to, So this is called Here in the Rugged Noble West. It's legislative season, and guys in ties and shoe shines are worried about wolves, concocting wolf management plans. So here's mine. 1, if a wolf pack kills a cow, all senators go without a burger. 2, the rancher and his family get a free trip to Norway to ski or sail the fjords. 3, if a hunter goes without a trophy elk, he gets a half an hour of my sympathy. 4, if wolves lope into your dreams, you have my praise. I wish I could be there too. The snow done falling, the wind stopped still in its tracks, all of us waiting. 5, if they circle inside you like a hungry idea, it's a sign that you're unfit for office. 6, at random places along the interstate, I'll post arrows pointing out the moon. And this one's called If Wolves Lope into Your Dreams. If wolves lope into your dreams, they're a sign that someone's coming. Something's coming, a message you need to be still inside to hear. And it won't be a woman's name, though some have names like music. And it won't be a woman's body, though some are shaped like music. No, they'll draw a wide circle around your disquiet and howl. The opposite of avenues, the opposite of the neighbor's backyard dog barking in time with your heartbeat. Right now, a wolf is dreaming too. And it isn't dreaming of people. Behind its eyes, it's chasing the mountains, wanting to tear the earth from its hold on the moon. And this is called the Church of the Stars and the Moon. It is not actually a real church. It could be. I mean, I think it could. Sure, why not? All right, the Church of the Stars and the Moon. Of course, they weren't resurrecting. But the mouse I found in the garden one evening, dropped by the carrots when my cat got bored, and the dead bird broken in the deck chair, such a nice spot to stretch out easy while you're thinking, while you're pinning one wing and watching the other one flail. In the morning when I went back to toss them, they were gone, and then I could hear it for certain, a call that wasn't like, "Ooh," but more like, more, more. And so I had an owl. A little piece of neighborhood lightning. I'd swing by the pet store, buy mice to stock the yard and keep watch. My eyes tuned to shadows. I'd will the street to sit still and be quiet so the owl would let go and glide, carve its arc across the backyard darkness just to hitch one moment when the talons clutched, then gone. The best part of summer. I only saw it once. But I found where the bones wound up. Always at the base of a telephone pole in the alley behind the garage, I noticed ants one day in their organized scramble. Sure enough, an above-ground catacomb, a toss of miniature driftwood, deposit of dead. It probably like the crossbeam, like a long, high table with an open view of below, and ate unhurried and ate well, then sat like a messenger angel in the Church of the Stars and the Moon. Don't believe it's impossible. If angels are real, then an angel might be an owl. They do seem to be intercessors, calling out across the empty spaces, their gold eyes filling up zeros, their wings like a bridge, something reaching from up to down, lower to higher, at least for a while. I miss my owl's company. I wish it had stayed all summer. But maybe like angels, they belong to no one. Maybe wildness is an answer from the sky. Okay, I'm going to do one more poem, but it's a little bit long. And before I do that, I want to make sure if somebody has something they want to say back to me or a question they want to ask, especially because from the intro it seemed like I'm supposed to allow that. Or talk about writing process or something. Does anybody want to ask or say anything? No?
Maybe we'll think about it.
All right, maybe after. This one's called No Return Address. And I will finish with it. I'll explain though, because it seems to me that not everybody still writes on the envelope, licks a stamp, and sends it. You know what happens? I mean, email, what? You know what happens if you have no return address in the corner and it goes to the wrong place, right? Okay, good. I work sometimes with freshmen who are only 18 and they're like, envelope? What's that? No return address. We've driven down the coast on the 101 to this rugby tournament in Monterey. It's a great drive, anyway, without tequila. But we did have tequila and lots of ice and beer. So even before we got to Eureka, the camaraderie had really kicked in. Some combination of Dylan and AC/DC, and Annie deciding she's not waiting until we stopped for gas. Then she hung her butt out the window to pee while I hung on so she wouldn't fall. She didn't, of course. It's not that kind of story. Greg just stopped the next town we came to hose down the side of the truck. He had this giant Chevy Suburban, and Annie had pretty much soaked it. That's what happens peeing in the wind. Rugby's got little to do with this, actually. I think we won a game or two, but I don't know. I can't remember. What I do remember is camping at Big Sur. If you've never been there, you should. You put up a tent, you're in a redwood forest. You get a fire going at night and watch the flames, you're in a redwood forest. You chug down aspirin and a ton of water so you won't be too hungover, and you're in a redwood forest with its green and smells and ocean cold and air so clear it's like a telescope for the stars you find between the tops of trees as you're lying on your back in the moss and needles. And when you wake up in the morning in the gray light and fog, that's right, you're waking up in a redwood forest. And if you're lucky like I was, you're going to go play rugby and your coach already has a fire lit and the coffee's boiling and there are sausages and he's stirring up a pot of baked beans. Now, I never had baked beans for breakfast, and I never have since, but I ate them then. Man, they were good. So was the coffee. We drank it black out of these dented metal cups. And it's not like I'm some kind of Philistine. I've had lots of great food. I've got refined taste and so on. But that morning there in the forest by the ocean, drinking coffee and eating baked beans, what can I say? You don't choose life off a menu. And what you always remember isn't always what you think. Well, it won't be funny when I explain it, Annie said, a month or so after we were married. But you know how your imagination gets carried away and then your conscious mind catches up and you become aware of what you were thinking and how strange it is? I was thinking about how quiet it is tonight. Like there's no one else in the world and no world left except for this room. Like we're in a bomb shelter or something. And from there, I started wondering if I did have to live in a bomb shelter, what would I take? And it wasn't the Mona Lisa or anything. I was thinking of tampons, actually. And how much water I'd need, if there'd be enough to brush my teeth. And Carmex, too, because I hate when my lips get dry. See what I mean? Who worries about toilet paper at the end of the world? It's crazy, really, because if they ever do drop the bombs, then the last place I'll be is a fallout shelter. I'll be the one car headed in the wrong direction, cruising along with the top down, honking that horn and everyone trying to escape, just yelling, "Good luck, suckers," as they ride off into the flashpoint with a bottle of vodka and the stereo going full blast. Then a minute or two passed, and her stomach rose and dropped beneath my hand. Annie was sleeping, and her skin was warm. And suddenly the wind came gusting, bringing that cool, clean smell of the mountains, dancing open our bedroom curtains after 3 straight weeks of heat. I knew right then it would be raining soon, and we'd wake up easy in the morning, just stay there together like we did, and listen to the rain. It was the weirdest thing I ever got in the mail. It was from Annie, 10 years after our divorce, and it was her ashes from being cremated. And there was this letter with them all official stating she donated her body for hospital research. She died, auto accident, DOA, and they had this form she'd filled out when we were still married, naming me as next of kin. It was a strange feeling, believe me, stranger than ghosts. First, you think it's a joke. Then you can't believe she's dead. Then you're finally left with wondering what to do. So here's what I did. See, some things are more than an obligation. And I'd like to believe I got it right, just this one thing anyway. What I did was split her ashes into 7 equal parts. It seemed like the right kind of number, mythic and lucky. The first part, I drove up to Mount St. Helens. It had been years since it blew up, but that's just seconds in geology, and that was the point. I figured she'd be there for the whole rebirth, that she'd be a part of it. From there, I drove to Vantage, out on the bridge across the river where the wind comes down the gorge at 100 miles an hour. Her ashes flew everywhere. And I like to think they made it to the ocean. And Walla Walla, Puget Sound, and one day they'll wind up on a table in a restaurant where this couple is having some oysters, pasta, a bottle of wine, and right then he asks her to marry him and she says yes. And it lasts forever. Then I kept on east to Polson, Montana, where the Rockies practically rise out of Flathead Lake. And the fourth part, I went and scattered at Gasworks Park. You can see the whole Seattle skyline from there and see the whole sky reflected in its glass. It's quite a place. And it's a quiet place. After that, I went to Roy Street and left the fifth part in front of Bon Tai. I love that restaurant. She'll get to smell that cooking every day. For the sixth part, I had to go back to Spokane and scatter them over the falls. She always liked the Spokane River, especially there. It would have been her birthday. And that was that. It was all I could do at the time. Because the rest belonged in New Orleans. I needed to wait until Christmas, till the lights were up and shimmering on all the mansions and trees in the Garden District. It's amazing, beautiful. Like what I think heaven will look like, assuming there really is one. And that we even need such a place. Thanks. Do I go back there? Do anybody want to ask me something? Or?
Anybody? Questions?
Yeah.
Do you have a website?
No, but my brother, who thinks I should, created something on Facebook. So, and it says Rob Carney Facebook not monitored by me. Right? I can't do anything even if I want to do because I don't have a membership. Whatever it is, I don't. So there's that.
So if we wanted to order one of your
We get it right now tonight from me, where you can call Sam Weller Bookworks, or Ken Sanders Rare Books, or of course Amazon does everything, or there is the press itself directly, or University of Washington, the distribution, many, many ways. So if you can't get it tonight, you can order it online, even as simply as Amazon.
And Rob has a couple other titles too.
Oh yeah, there are other books besides.
And he's won, I didn't mention this initially, he's won 2 Utah Book of Poetry Awards, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Was that poem like real? Not real, but
Of course. Well,
did that actually happen?
Which one?
The one about Annie?
The one about Annie? Oh, see, that's one of the things, On the one hand, I want to say, absolutely, it's completely true except for some of the details, all right? But what people mean is, am I a memoirist? I think, when they ask that question. And no, I am not a memoirist. So it is not 100% pure by syllable, by syllable, by syllable autobiography. But most of it did. Most. Yeah.
Why do you talk about why you memorize your poems and deliver them that way? Like
Okay, it just-
why do you make that choice?
Well, I like the oral tradition, and I backed up into it by accident. Having moved from Louisiana to Salt Lake, where I know nobody, one of the things that I found out about through City Weekly or something was that they were doing a reading, and they were calling it a slam, which was new news to me in '97, at a place that doesn't exist anymore called Cup of Joe's. And, you know, and I went down there, and they were, the rule was 3 minutes, and you're supposed to do it, original work, 3 minutes, from memory. Now, as it turned out, I took that, you know, to be a rule, and if it's a rule, of course. I mean, for instance, when I was in school, if somebody turned to me and said, "Did you do the homework?" Of course. I mean, what do you mean? Didn't you? No.